You know, ever since I discovered that covering media gets me way more views than drama ever did, I've been trying to distance myself away from it more and more. My old fans, of course, want me to go back to talking about drama, but my new fans want me to talk about media shows. If only there was a way to somehow combine the two of them. Well, do you remember that video I did near the start of the year with Spy V, the one about female villains? Well, guess what? The completely uncontroversial and self-proclaimed professional writer, Diregentleman, responded to it. Now I get a lot of response videos made on me, but they're mostly from small, nobody YouTubers. And while this guy does have a smaller sub count than me, his video on me blew the fuck up, reaching over 100,000 views. Well, folks, this might be the video that puts me down once and for all, so let's go check it out. Oh yeah, and small disclaimer, don't go harass this guy.
Hey, I'm bullshit. Kill me.
What do you get when you cross a mediocre commentary channel with even worse media criticism? You get Just a Robot's magnum opus, The Problem with Female Villains.
Ah, yes, my magnum opus. Maybe I'm just nitpicking here, but why in the hell did Diregentleman call it my magnum opus? It's not even close to my magnum opus. If anything, it's a below average video of mine that I quickly threw together as my editors were finishing up my first Daft Peanut video. Now maybe this is a joke, but I certainly don't see the punchline, do you? As for calling me a subpar commentator and that my media criticism is even worse. Bro, I've seen the likes, dislikes, and the other backlash you get underneath your media criticism videos, and none of mine are as bad as yours. Let's not forget about the complete curb stomp you received from Cartoonchi. I'm just saying, people who live in glass houses probably shouldn't throw stones. I'll be going into Diregentleman's media criticism at the end of this video.
So why don't we cut to the chase and see what Just a Robot has to say about villains? Just the lady ones, of course.
Yes, because it's a video about female villains. What, did you want me to talk about the non-binary ones as well?
He posits the current slate of villains in modern entertainment don't hold a candle to the pantheon of classic female villains that he lists, such as Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and wait, that's it? That's his only example?
You know what? Fair point. I should have gone over more. Or at least that's what a viewer of this video would think. But I also go over two other female villains, one of which is Dr. Smith from Lost in Space, who he completely cut out of this video so he could lie about me. The other of which is a female villain from Resident Evil, which he leaves in this video, but he still acts like Azula's my only example for some reason. Yeah, you're gonna notice throughout this video that he cuts me out of context a lot so he can make a point.
Years of human storytelling, and he chose one character from a Nickelodeon cartoon in the 2000s. Incredible. No Lady Macbeth, Ishtar, Medusa, Nurse Ratched, Regina George, Wicked Witch of the West.
I guess a few of those are good examples, even though I haven't seen most of those things. Now, a lot of this guy's arguments throughout this video are, why didn't you go over all of this stuff? It's another one of those you didn't mention X, therefore biased arguments. But I can turn that around on him. Why don't you elaborate on why these female villains are good villains? I'm a big fan of Greek mythology, so I know a lot about Medusa. What makes Medusa a great villain? Is it her unique power? Turning people to stone who directly gaze upon her? No, I don't think that's it. Maybe it was all the evil things she did and the plans she concocted. Like hanging out in a cave and minding her own business until Perseus showed up and killed her. In some versions of the myth of Medusa, she's actually a victim of the gods, not the villain. She was Cosby'd by Poseidon and then cursed by Athena for losing her virginity unwillingly. Now I guarantee you, if the situation was reversed and I brought up Medusa as a good example of a female villain, this guy would say something along the lines of, yes, a prime example of what Just a Robot thinks is a good female villain. A wape victim. I bet he would say something along the lines of, "Look what she was wearing. She tempted Poseidon." As for all the other female villains he brought up, I'm not going to do research into every single one of them. First of all, it would make the video drag, adding about another 10 minutes to the video. And second, he's just gish galloping.
Can I get some love for my girl, Madam Gasket?
Oh, I get it, cause I'm a robot. You're a funny guy. But I want to legitimately understand why he thinks she's a good villain, or why anything about this movie was good. It was completely historically inaccurate. Robbie was a domestic terrorist, and he did not repair any robots.
But these are just the villains from the before times, when every female villain was assumed to be good.
Which was never an argument I made, nor implied, but you're going to pretend like I did.
Azula is the only character in the entire series who can use blue fire, which is about twice as hot as normal fire. She fucking one-shot Aang while he was in the Avatar state. She's smart, calculating, beautiful, and funny.
Okay, so she's powerful, manipulative, and complex. And I agree, she's a great villain. Azula serves as a rival and foil to Zuko throughout the story, representing the opposite side of the Fire Lord's abusive parenting. An overachiever who ties her sense of self-worth to her ability to destroy her enemies and impress her father. Her determination to win at life is so central to her being that when she starts losing, it breaks her mind. She's something of a tragic figure, a product of a toxic environment, but no less an unrepented monster. Anything to add, Jar?
Wait, hang on, let me look up her age here. Holy shit, she's only 14.
With how long of a clip he played for my video, I could probably copyright claim it. I'm not going to, but I could. Want to hear something messed up? Months later, when I haven't even fought back against this guy and just completely ignored his video on me, this guy made a YouTube short meme out of this part, using my thumbnail where I was falsely accused of grooming a 13-year-old girl. Dude, that is so fucking messed up. You made a meme out of something that traumatized me. And I know people were memeing on my thumbnail. In fact, I think it reached the front page of Twitter at one point. But he didn't do this until months after people stopped memeing on my thumbnail. Like, to this day, I don't get the big deal with the thumbnail. When I posted it, no one had a problem with it. Once the video went up, people had a problem with it.
And you would think that a lot of writers would try to take some tips from her on how to make good female villains.
Yes, but actually no.
But unfortunately, a few years after Azula, a lot of female villains started going really downhill. So now let's talk about a female villain who really isn't all that great. Evil Lyn from Masters of the Universe Revelations.
Psst, dude, I think you left some dead memes and overused sound effects on your editing timeline. It's almost like your editor doesn't have much confidence in the raw material. And I mean, they're not wrong.
Yes, that's why I hired him in the first place, to improve my videos. Good editing will cover up the fact that I'm a talentless hack. Do you have any other groundbreaking arguments, like the sky is blue?
Seeing as most of it is sloppy seconds from another Just a Robot video titled, "Why is there so much wokeness in shows nowadays?" Nowadays? Is my grandpa ghostwriting these for you?
Oh no, guys. I use the term nowadays. I must be an old grandpa.
Oh my god, do people actually find this guy funny?
I only bring that video up because Just a Robot explicitly pointed us to it for additional context. We just had to watch it to fully comprehend Jar's Galaxy Brain Masters of the Universe revelations. They're so profound and irrefutable that he literally repeats all of his points verbatim in both videos.
He immediately loses it to Evil Lyn, who uses her feminine charm to get him to drop his guard. But then she uses her feminine charm to get Skeletor to drop his guard. She looks like a character from Baki. Turning herself into a character from Baki, I mean a master of the universe. So Lyn decides that she's going to destroy the entire universe, and because there's no order to the universe and God is dead, she decides she's going to destroy the universe. You only destroyed fucking heaven, but not before destroying fucking heaven. Evil Lyn sees the error of her ways and she's no longer evil because in current year, women are never evil. But after a battle with Teela, she decides she doesn't want to be a villain anymore and gets reformed again.
Oh shit.
The takeaway from those clips I just showed, other than the fact that Just a Robot is a lazy self-plagiarist that sounds like a Teddy Ruxpin version of Saberspark who's running out of batteries.
God, this guy is so angry with me. But yeah, I did say the same thing in the video that I linked people to watch. Honestly, I did it just to see if anyone would point it out, and I guess you did, so you get a gold star. Also, I do say different things about Evelyn in each video. They're not a one-to-one comparison. But even though I repeated myself twice, and he edited those two together, so he's probably seen them both multiple times, he still completely misses the point of my arguments.
Is that Evelyn is grossly overpowered.
Really? I complained about her being grossly overpowered? Well, I bet you have some evidence to support that. Now, of course, you don't, because I never complained about her being overpowered. You just pulled that out of your ass.
Why don't you back it up with a source? My source is that I made it the fuck up.
I've gone on record before saying that I love the villain Sue. If a villain is overpowered, it gives the hero something to overcome and fight against.
And too easily forgiven for her villainous actions.
Wow, correct. I did actually make that argument. But why is Diregentleman bringing this up? Well, it's for absolutely no reason. You see, he's bringing up these examples to make a comparison between the villain I don't like, Evelyn, and the villain I do like, Azula. But Azula is never easily forgiven, and he never makes an argument for it. He only brings it up to make it seem like he's making a one-to-one comparison between the two, when he really isn't.
Unlike Azula, who gets what she wants through manipulation and unique powers beyond the scope of most other characters in the setting, Evelyn gets what she wants through manipulation and unique powers beyond the scope of most other characters in the setting.
See what I mean? I never complained about Evelyn being too powerful. He just made it up so he could have a point. And I don't think Azula is a good villain because she's powerful. I just brought it up because I'm fine with female villains having a lot of power. And to make a point that Azula is more than her powers, because even when they are taken away, she's still a major threat. Using her manipulation to buy time for her and the Fire Lord and the rest of the Fire Nation to get their bending back. And while I guess you're correct that both Evelyn and Azula used manipulation to get what they want, all the time Azula manipulates are a bit better than Evelyn's one time at manipulation.
Oh, Skeletor, bone me, but power down first.
I guess I could power down from this form I'm in that I desired for so long, because if I stayed in this form I would kill you with Snoo, which is something I somehow know.
Haha, I got your sword.
No, you didn't, and oh, that sword.
And maybe he's right, but how did Just a Robot not notice that Evelyn is played by Lena Headey, who is not just the insanely evil Cersei Lannister in HBO's once-beloved Game of Thrones, but also the terrifying, murderous gang leader Mama in the 2012 Dredd movie? Honestly, an unsung classic. Both were irredeemable, were villains from start to finish, and were both given violent downfalls.
How did I not know that? Well, I guess I just didn't look up the voice actress. Would me bringing up the other actresses' roles made my video better? I guess. But this doesn't defeat any of my arguments. This is just a you didn't mention X, therefore biased argument. And I would have only brought up Game of Thrones because I haven't seen the other one. But this is such a stupid argument. Guess what? You can't complain about this character because the actor played other great characters. Now, maybe that's not his argument, but I can't figure out what it's supposed to be.
Why does any of that matter? Well, those are the exact qualities needed for a female villain to pass the groundbreaking, world-shattering Mechanicist test. What is the Mechanicist test, you ask? Well, it is none other than Just a Robot's very own test to determine the good written ability of female villains. Let's hear it from the Mechanicist himself.
The Mechanicist test. A movie with a female villain will fail the Mechanicist test if A, the female villain is redeemed way too easily, or B, the female villain is actually not evil.
Before we unpack this any further, I've just gotta say, thank God the Mechanicus test only works on female villains. All of your favorite redeemed male villains are safe. Loki, Roy Batty, Severus Snape, Negan, Gideon Gleeful, Dr. Octopus from Spider-Man 2, Lord Business, Meruem from Hunter x Hunter, the T-800, and of course, Darth fucking Vader himself.
I mean, I guess the Mechanicus test could also work on male villains, even though I only put this line in here to make fun of the Bechdel test, but you decided to edit out the part where I say that. And the the Bechdel test also only works on female characters, but I guess it's okay when they do it. But even then, one of the examples I gave for a female villain redeeming herself was sacrificing their own life, like with the example I gave of Dr. Smith from the reboot of Lost in Space. Do you want to hear who else sacrificed their life to redeem themselves? Most of those male villains you brought up. Can you please stop strawmanning me and editing what I say to change my point? Dr. Octopus giving up his life to save New York City because he realized the mistake he made is a lot better than Evelyn nuking heaven, nearly destroying the entire universe, her only redeeming quality being that she didn't go through with it, and her only punishment was her being banished. Dude, I'm gonna be real here, your examples fucking suck.
Who Jar has been using as B-roll for the good villains section of this video. But we'll get back to Vader later.
No, that's what my editor put in, not me. I don't even know who the fuck Roy is. It's funny that when my editor puts too many memes in, it's a problem on my part for not being funny enough. But when my editor puts up footage that you don't agree with, suddenly it's my fault. But let's see the Darth Vader argument he comes up with. I bet it's gonna be another you didn't mention X, therefore biased argument.
While Just a Robot waits until almost the end of the video to introduce it, the Mechanicus test boils down his main problem with so-called modern female villains. He believes they're either not evil enough in the first place, or when they are, they're punished with a finger wag and a slap on the wrist. Jar's main example for the first condition is Disney's Maleficent, as played by Angelina Jolie. And he might have been onto something too, if the 2014 movie didn't change the original story to make her the protagonist. Well done, Jar. She's not the bad guy in this one.
She was the bad guy. Her name literally means to wish evil on others. My problem is, the trailer made me think it was going to be focusing on the villain, but they just made the villain into a good guy. An example I brought up was the Joker movie, where he was still fucking evil, but we sympathized with him. The second one is called Mistress of Evil, something Maleficent used to call herself, but now it's some queen.
Because she was never intended to be. Just a Robot even admits that the real villain of the movie is the king, but it's okay, because he's both super evil and doesn't get redeemed. So at least someone in this popcorn cash grab passes the Mechanicus test.
Okay, so this is where I actually stopped watching this video originally, because while he does play the footage from my video, he doesn't play the audio, and here's what I said.
Basically, she's no longer a villain. I guess you could say she was just evil for the sake of being evil, and that made her a boring character. But now they just have the king being evil just for the sake of being evil. This character is really boring. Let's make them more complex by adding another boring character.
As you can see, I said twice that he's a boring villain. You're acting like I only have problem with female villains, but I still, in this very video, point out problems with the male villains. You're blatantly lying about what I said. You're acting like I said I liked this villain when I clearly don't. Sure, this could be a mistake, but the fact that I said it twice and he still twisted what I said, I think this was intentional. Trust me, I really want to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though he probably wanted to do the same for me, but I really don't see how he could make a mistake like this.
Fuck it. I'm calling it the Mechanist test from now on, because Mechanicist is not a real word.
Yeah, it's my last name canonically.
He also makes the bizarre choice of criticizing Maleficent for overwriting the lore of Sleeping Beauty to make the female villain more sympathetic, then bafflingly says it should be more like Joker, a movie which absolutely portrays Arthur Fleck with a degree of sympathy and doesn't slot into the canon of any previous iteration of the character. Seriously, does anyone remember the Batman movie where Bruce Wayne was beating up a 70-year-old dude in clown makeup because Fleck was already 50 when Bruce was a kid? Smells like a rewrite to me.
You'll notice again that he's playing footage, but not playing what I said so he can make up whatever bullshit he wants.
I think if they just had her be evil towards the end, but still somewhat sympathetic and where you can understand where she's coming from, the movie would have done so much better.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Like, take the Joker. We sympathized with him. A lot of people related to his character. But at the end of the day, he was still fucking evil. Like, imagine if the movie ended with Arthur saving Bruce Wayne from the guy who shot his parents and he was the one to train Batman. Okay, in a way that sounds fucking awesome, but it's stupid.
The comparison I made between Joker and Maleficent was about how Joker was given an origin story, still evil, but at the same time somewhat sympathetic. Not that Joker's origin story was less rewritten than Maleficent was. You do this constantly. You're trying to argue with a point I never made. I guess your argument would work if I made the point you're arguing against. But just for fun, I'll be your straw man and argue against your point. If you read comics, there are actually 3 people who were the Joker, so this could just be the earliest version of him. 2, comic books are rewritten constantly while Disney was trying to adapt their own version of the Maleficent story. Disney's Sleeping Beauty and the actual Sleeping Beauty are different stories. 3, and most importantly, did you even watch the Joker movie? It's heavily implied at the end that all the events were in Joker's head.
What's so funny?
It's just think of a joke.
The dude is crazy. He gave himself an imaginary girlfriend. You can't even properly argue against the straw man you created of me. And your whole argument of, hey, this thing you like shares one problem of the many problems you pointed out about this thing, is just dumb. Like, if I made a video about the war crimes the Germans in World War II committed, would you complain that I didn't go over what America did to the Japanese? America had camps too, therefore they're a one-to-one comparison.
But there's a place for rewrites, and it should have been in this part of the video.
I also heard they did something similar in the live-action Cruella movie, but I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, brother, why did he even include this? Is Jar already out of examples after giving like half of one? This video title claims that it's about the problem with female villains, and so far, I'm feeling clickbaited.
It doesn't seem like clickbait to me. I went over the 2 female villains that are in the thumbnail at the start of the video. And yeah, I don't go over Maleficent, but do you know who does? Spy V, who is in this video.
But if Jar thinks that Maleficent and Cruella dropped the ball for giving an iconic villain a sympathetic origin story, imagine if that sympathetic origin story was stretched across not 1, not 2, but 3 of the worst movies of all time. Welcome back, Vader. Anakin Skywalker acts like an insufferable little shit for 5 agonizing hours before flipping and committing some religious genocide with a little bit of light child murder on the side, all because some Tusken Raiders killed his mom and he was scared about his wife dying, all of which is forgiven because he doesn't want his crusty old boss to tase his son to death. If we're talking about origin stories that strip the magic away from a once intimidating villain, the Star Wars prequel trilogy is the gold fucking standard.
Oh yeah, good point. I guess Vader's origin story does suck in the prequel movies. I don't see what your point is or how this debunks anything I've said, but good for you. Yeah, it's another one of those you didn't mention X, therefore biased arguments. But let's say I did actually go over this in my video. He would complain saying, wait a second, I thought this video was about female villains, not villains in general. Did you just add this in to pad out the video?
The Cruella flub isn't the only strange writing choice in Just a Robot's video either. He does eventually get to his second example of a modern female villain, Lady Dimitrescu, which he pretends to mispronounce because he's a hack and can't even remember which game she's from.
From Resident Evil 7. Oh wait, sorry, my mistake, it was Resident Evil 8. I'm not a fan of the series, I don't keep up with it.
This is hilarious because if he'd played or even properly read the wiki summaries for either game, he'd know that they're both full of critically acclaimed female villains that also passed the Mechanist test. Resident Evil 7...
I don't care! No more of these you didn't mention X, therefore biased arguments. Yeah, I could have given more examples. The video would have been longer. I don't know what your argument is supposed to be. This debunks none of what I said. Also, this contradicts an earlier argument he made at the start of this video where he said Azula was Jar's only example of a good female villain. Just another lie to add to the pile.
Something tells me that Just a Robot was aware of the existence of other female villains in RE8, but glosses over them because he's 10 minutes into a nothing video and the sunk cost fallacy has finally kicked in.
So you make fun of me mixing up which number of game it is, and now you think I do know about the other female villains in a game series that I said I'm not a fan of. Except the 5th one, that one was awesome! That's also a joke, I haven't played that one either, I just know about the controversies around it. I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. Also, I used her as an example of a good villain. So if I say something good about a game, should I also go over everything else I liked about it? I made an example of how a female villain is done good, but apparently it wasn't good enough for you. I had to go over all the others as well.
Everybody fucking loved that tall undead vampire mommy. And what did they do? Well, they had her die really early on, and the story was focused on this other female villain who no one remembers.
Your editor seems a little thirsty, man. You should ask them to bust before they send you the final cut of the video. Or better yet, fire them.
I have gotten more subs than you in less time, and I even have a better view to sub ratio than you. So sorry, but I'm not going to take any advice from someone like you. And you should know that this editing is done to be funny, not because my editor is thirsty.
I haven't mentioned it yet, but the editing style of Just a Robot's content is best described as iFunny on meth. Anytime he worries that the audience might be drifting off, the editor just spins the frame, deep fries some shoehorned viral clip you half remember from 2016, and blows your speakers out with the reverb on a fart noise. Come on, Jar. Save yourself the cringe and just edit your own videos. We both know you're not spending that extra time on the script.
Funny thing is, I didn't use a script for this video or most of the other videos I have made. I only very recently this year started using a script. And sure, you along with a few other people don't like his editing, but this guy has worked for me, Manga Common, Just Stop, and a few others. People didn't like my old editing, so I got a few editors and people are still bitching. At least I now know where all those comments complaining about the editing came from now. You have a lot of yes men.
Oh, and also, he mentions the diamonds from Steven Universe as being too easily redeemed, which is news to nobody. You're telling me that Steven Universe overly relied on redemption arcs for its villains? Stop the fucking press.
Wow, even when he agrees with me, he has to word it in an insulting way. So he makes a big deal about this as if it was a big point in my video, but as you can see, he doesn't play the audio of the clip. So here's what I said about the diamonds from Steven Universe.
This is the biggest problem with modern female villains. They're not evil. Or they are evil and they get redeemed way too fast, like the diamonds from Steven Universe.
Wow, I talked about them for a whole 5 seconds. It's almost like I somewhat agreed with you. So I only talked about them for 5 seconds. But people who watched your video will think I talked about them for a lot longer. Bro, if you don't have a point to make, you know you can just leave my Steven Universe stuff out of your video, right? Then again, you really haven't made a point throughout this entire video, so I guess if you did that, you wouldn't have a video at all.
You might have noticed that we haven't talked about Spy V's section yet, and honestly, it's because we didn't really have a problem with it. The crux of her argument is that huge mass-market entertainment conglomerates like Disney are shaving down the edges of female characters in order to increase their appeal to a young, progressive audience, but end up alienating that same audience in the process by denying the characters in question depth and nuance. It's an apt criticism, but it feels out of place alongside Just a Robot's haphazard free association about one of the few things in this video he's actually watched.
It's Mr. MVP! Simp!
Okay, bro, chill it with the simping. At least now I know where all those comments about Spy V's part being the only good part came from. Before I go over this part of his video, I just want to say that a lot of people hate it when I and a lot of other people tell our audience not to attack someone. It's as if I'm saying, I can insult this guy and point out problems with his video, but you shouldn't do that. Here's the thing, I'm cool with you guys commenting under the videos I cover. Just don't be a yes man, because no one likes a yes man. Anyways, back to this guy's point. So first of all, he doesn't talk about how Spy V went over the Cruella movie, to make it look like I brought it up for nothing. Spy V joined me for this video after I showed it to her, because we both agree. That's why she's in my video! Her point is my point.
The main reason why Spy V comes across as more convincing than Jar in her arguments is that she isn't making some sweeping generalization about the decline of all female villains.
Wow, really? It's almost like I'm not doing that myself. And you just made it up for some reason.
She's talking about a specific phenomenon and the causes for it. The information presented is backed up by market trends that are plainly evident. Laying the blame for a widespread problem on the suits that have a disproportionate control over creativity hits closer to home because it offers a concrete explanation. It's certainly more substantial than Jar implying that every writer after 2010 got their talent energy bent out of them by the Soy Lord.
You can't be this stupid. If I disagreed with her, I wouldn't let her be in my video, stupid. At the start of my video, I said female villains are kind of going downhill. Please explain to me how that translates to all new female villains are bad, when I also go over a few of the new ones I like. One of which was Dr. Smith, who you took out of this video. It's almost like I didn't say that or something and you just made it up. I hate it when I'm blamed for the bad points of my co-host, even when it's on someone else's channel. I still get comments from people asking me what is my problem with the Alpha J show, when Digby the Goat made that point on his channel and not me. I just so happened to be in the video with him when he said that. But now if my co-host makes a good point, I'm still somehow the bad guy.
To her credit, Spy V also raises the point that there are still many great female characters, villainous or otherwise, in modern media. They're just not by and large coming from kid-friendly summer blockbusters or cheesy nostalgia-bait cartoons based on a line of science fantasy toys from the 80s.
No, she doesn't say that. The closest thing to that point was this.
So I'm definitely one who has kind of been watching the relative downhill decline in female characters in more recent years, at least when it comes to the mainstream stuff. Obviously there are still plenty of great female characters of all strokes somewhere out there, but when we're talking about these mega conglomerates like Disney and whatnot, there seems to be this need to appeal to the more modern and socially aware crowd, but often in doing so they end up completely undermining the entire point that that crowd was trying to make and produce characters that piss everyone off or they don't really satisfy anybody.
You really like to just make things up so you can have a point, don't you?
And she's right about that. So right, in fact, that we prepared a list of female villains from recent years that not only passed the Mechanist test, but are also well written by real standards.
I'm skipping a massive section of his video because it's just a giant "you didn't mention X" point. It goes on for like 5 minutes. I think I made it clear that all of Diregentleman's points against me were just made up in his head.
Share any we missed down in the comments. But I think we've made the case that this wide trend of female villain decline is entirely imaginary. Look, I can't know what Jar has watched or even heard of from the above list, but for him to make this specific video with that specific title, he should have considered whether the plurality of data actually supported his claims. The thing about proving a point is, you need proof.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you needed to make things up, or at least that's what I got from your video. I'm not saying all new female villains are bad, and if you watch the full video like most people did, you would know that. But maybe you didn't know that until you were halfway done with your script.
We here at the Diregentleman channel have now done all of Jar's homework for him, and he can come out of the trenches in no-brains land because the culture war is officially over.
I can't tell if this is a joke or not because all of his points are so bad, but the culture war will always be going on.
I want to clarify. I really don't think Jar is a bad person. I just think he's lazy, and desperately in need of a tune-up.
Oh wow, that's a nice thing to say about me, but I can't say the same. You might just be stupid, but with how this video was edited in a way to change my points over and over again, I really think you're a snake.
And to help with that, we're going to take a leaf out of his pamphlet and end this video with a little tip for him. If you want to have more interesting things to say about art, consume more of it. And I'm not just talking whatever Disney is sharting out or whatever nostalgia-bait cartoon series is trending on Netflix. Read, watch, and listen broadly.
This is something he says in a lot of other videos. but I don't get what he means by this. Diregentleman, you do know I've seen a lot more than the shows I went over in this video, right? I'll be going over this more later on, but I really think he just says this to sound like he's seen a lot of movies.
There's a huge wealth of amazing creations in the past, and some incredible stuff coming out right now if you care to look for it. Instead of Joker, maybe you could work up the courage to watch King of Comedy or Taxi Driver.
I've seen Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. So, what point are you trying to make? Do you really think the shows and movies I went over in this video are the only ones that I have watched? Joker was about a villain, so that's why I went over it.
You know, real movies? Jar, you're presumably an adult now, and that means you're allowed to watch the big boy movies and shows. I know your parents probably don't want you watching the ones with boobies and swears in them.
What the fuck? Isn't Joker R-rated? And didn't the media tell us all not to go see it? Bro, I don't live with my parents, and I haven't for a few years now. I also think I might be older than you, yet I look younger than you. So you think I'm not a bad guy, but you'll paint me as someone who's only seen 20 shows and movies, and lives with his parents.
But you can watch them under the covers on your laptop really late at night, and they'll never even know!
Wow, bro, you are so hardcore. You've seen movies with tits that say the word ass? Fuck me, I bet this guy hasn't even seen Repo the Genetic Opera, because somehow me seeing that movie makes me more right or something. So, I don't think Diregentleman knows about my family life, but my mom was super religious. And I did what he said when I watched Berserk as a kid. My parents still found out because they looked at my internet history every single day. I just didn't know that until that day, of course. I didn't get PC time for 2 weeks. I don't know what your fucking problem is with me, bro. I didn't do anything to you. Are you saying this because I talk about cartoons or mainstream stuff? Well, guess what? You do as well. You're the reason why I gave Centaur World a chance. Now that's all of his video on me that I'm willing to go over. So I used to be a fan of this guy. I loved his Hell of a Boss reviews and a lot of the other videos he has made, like his one on Lily Pete. But then I looked into him more, and I found out that I really only seen his good videos. For example, his newest Hell of a Boss review. It was absolutely terrible. To be honest, I'm a little shocked that there's not a ton of videos on this guy. I was originally planning to end the video here, but after watching his video on Arcane and Cartoon Cheese video on him, I realized I could easily establish a pattern with this guy's behavior and who he is as a person. Also, his video on Arcane was just so incredibly bad that I just have to talk about it. Now, if you haven't seen Arcane, it's one of the very few shows that I highly recommend. In fact, I have a video planned about how video game shows and movies are good now. Now, I want to make it clear that Diregentleman doesn't hate the show. However, he had a big issue with the scene in episode 3 where Jinx's sister Vi takes out a very large henchman in one hit. He wishes the fights in the show were more like the one in episode 1, when Vi and her gang fought a group of bullies. It's a subjective opinion, but I totally understand where he's coming from. However, Diregentleman, of course, has to be very insulting to the people he's arguing against.
I think I would have liked Arcane a lot more if it resolved more conflicts like this. But as the show goes on and the League of Legends marketing takes hold, characters like Vi become increasingly superhuman in their feats, and the battles are more about simply outslugging the opponent. Mainly just brought up Grimgar to say that Yume the Party Hunter is a 10 out of 10 best girl who is leaps and bounds better than your cringe League of Legends wife.
You know, I was making a joke about him simping before, but I'm serious this time. What does this anime girl have to do with League of Legends? Why are you insulting the waifus of other people? I'm gonna be real here, dude. Your waifu is trash. My waifu is Garbodor, because like all waifus, she's trash. Now granted, this girl is from an anime that he uses as an example for a point he's making, but the anime was the point, not the girl. He just does this to piss people off.
But being a League of Legends adaptation means that the named characters need to be superhuman for the sake of marketing. Vi needs to knock out the burly henchman in one punch because being a hand-to-hand brawler is her selling point. The power fantasy fantasy takes precedence over realism, and Arcane's intended audience are gamers who want their favorite playable characters to be just as strong in the show as they are within League of Legends itself. But nevertheless, it becomes the prevailing through line through most of the fight scenes in the show, where the popular League of Legends characters win easily by demonstrating the exact reasons you'd want to play as them or buy their branded merchandise.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. They also probably want a good story and it to be an accurate adaptation of the source material. But I've played the game and they're really not all that powerful. They mostly just kill each other and minions. Yeah, there's a few monsters they fight in the forest like dragons, but often they have to team up to do that. Were you really expecting them to just have generic fist fights throughout the entire show? So you really think they're powerful for that reason, to sell branded merchandise and get people to play them in the games? Or do you think they're that strong because it's supposed to be an accurate adaptation of the source material? Also, I wouldn't say they really win fights all too easily. Like, don't get me wrong, what he says almost sounds like he's making an argument, but when you really analyze it, it's nothing.
Anyone who has seen enough online discussion of Arcane knows that there is a certain vocal minority of Arcane fans who treat the show like it's an alternative to what they perceive as mainstream media. Never mind that Arcane is mainstream. It's based on one of the most popular MOBAs of all time, is available on Netflix, one of the biggest streaming platforms of all time, and happens to be the most liked show on the platform.
Diregentleman is of course not showing these people so he can strawman their arguments. What people mean by alternative to mainstream stuff is not because it's not mainstream, but because it's not full of woke bullshit. There are strong female characters without them being overpowered Mary Sues, but we'll get to that more later on. The cast is extremely diverse without them going, oh, look, we have a black guy. Oh, I bet no show has ever done this before. And a few of the characters are even gay without it being the first gay Disney character ever for the 7th.
Oh, would you look at that? They actually did it 17 times! That is not the first
time in a row. There's also multiple different ideologies in this show that are all given their fair shake, and they show their strengths and weaknesses.
Arcane is seen as different by these fans, mostly because of the way it handles its female main characters. I realize for most sane people who live in the real world, female characters are just characters who happen to be female. But we're dealing with weirdo sexists here. And in the mind of the weirdo sexists, female characters aren't a neutral part of telling a story that represents real people, but rather are makeshift soldiers on a cultural battleground where only the correct kind of female character can be left standing.
And this is the point where the video takes a bit of a nosedive. Off the Grand Canyon.
And now we see the exact reason as to why he made his video on me. Oh yeah. It's all coming together. So he says people who make a big deal about female characters are weirdo sexist, but he also referred to me as not a bad guy. So you think weirdo sexists are not bad people? Okay, bro. He says these weirdo sexists only want the correct female character to be left standing. Of course, he doesn't elaborate on what he means by this, but there's more than just one female character these people want to be left standing. Just in Arcane alone, we got Vi, Jinx, and Caitlyn, who are all unique from one another. There's certainly a lot more differences in their personality than the new Phase 4 Marvel girls. And I love how he says, I realize in the minds of most sane people. Bro, I hate to break it to you, but I don't think you're in the majority here. This video has more dislikes than my female villains video, which was covered by you, and your video got over 140,000 views. As far as I'm aware, no one has covered this video of yours. Until now, that is.
One of the things you hear all the time from these kinds of people is that badly written female characters, often known by the outdated term Mary Sue.
I love that he actually puts up a straw man. It's as if he's saying, yeah, I know I'm straw manning my opposition, but if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to come up with an argument against them. Also, you stating that the term Mary Sue is outdated isn't an argument. In fact, I think most people would agree that the term Mary Sue is more relevant than ever, but I already have an entire playlist all about Mary Sue, so if you want more information, just go check that out.
Win fights against stronger male characters simply for the sake of shallow empowerment.
I had to take a break from this video because that's an argument literally no one has ever made ever. No one says, oh, this woman beat up a man, she's a Mary Sue. I have made several videos about Mary Sues, and never once did I use the argument, oh, this woman beat up a man, she's a Mary Sue. Oh, and before you try to pull the gender card, I went over Gary Stu's as well. So he made a straw man of the term Mary Sue by just saying it's women beating up men. So now he can just say, you like this thing, but it has a woman beating up a man. Isn't that a Mary Sue by your own definition? No. It isn't. And I also love the text he puts up where he says, but not when anime does it, obviously. They just hate America. So I'm just gonna assume that the they just hate America part is a joke because I don't even think you're stupid enough to seriously make that point. You like this one thing from this one other country? You must hate your own country. And yeah, sure, there's a few Mary Sues and Gary Stu's in anime, but it's really not that big of an issue. Also, no one's definition of a Mary Sue is a woman beating up a man, so if you bring up any of those examples, they can go straight in the trash.
I couldn't help think about how many times I'd heard this accusation thrown around while I watched Vi throw around the several larger and more experienced grown men and women who were attacking her in that Arcane Act 1 fight scene.
Wow, really? It's almost like people don't have a problem with a girl beating up guys, and the real problem is with overpowered Mary Sues. Like if I was a man, people wouldn't have a problem with what she, now he, did. So because they wouldn't have a problem with a guy doing this, they wouldn't have a problem with a girl doing this. Sure, what Vi is doing isn't exactly realistic, but she got main character plot armor.
And look, I already see the comments on this video reducing this issue down to a matter of craft. Vi is well written, and other modern female characters aren't. Therefore, she can get away with doing all the things that we like to complain about in other female characters.
No, it's because she is well written, so she's not doing what those other modern female characters do. You're doing what you did in your video on me. You're strawmanning your opposition so you can make an argument. Like, who in their right mind would make the argument, oh, well, she's well written, so she can be a Mary Sue, and it's not a problem.
But here's the rub. To make the claim that it's okay when Vi punches out a man 3 times her size and then basically solos a gang of hardened criminals, you'd have to admit that having a female character do those things isn't inherently bad writing. And make no mistake, for anyone honest, it really isn't.
Yeah, it's almost like it's an argument no one ever made or something. Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here. Let's start off with the text he puts on screen.
Oh, show, please, for the love of everyone, watch media that isn't for children.
Dude, do you not realize you're talking about media for children in this video? Do you not realize that one of your most popular videos is about Centaur World? What realm do you live in? Yeah, you talk about media intended for children, but I know you've seen other stuff as well, but apparently you don't think that about anyone else. And for my next point, are you seriously comparing Vi to Ray? Okay, let's go over this. Now, both of them do come from a decently similar background. They were both scavengers, but Ray has the Force and Vi doesn't. So yes, Ray could get away with a little bit more than Vi. Like Diregentleman said, she took on a whole group of older men who were far more experienced and stronger than her. She's also pretty good at parkour after being in prison for several years. Yeah, she knew how to do it as a kid, but she should be way out of practice. Now let's go over Rey. She fixed a problem on the Millennium Falcon that not even Han Solo knew about, and he offered her a job despite only knowing her for like a day. Her first time using a lightsaber, she was evenly matched with Kylo Ren, who trained as a Jedi his entire life underneath Luke Skywalker, then as a Sith underneath Snoke. Now I guess you could make the argument that Kylo was in a weakened state at the time, but after doing literally no training with Luke Skywalker, she was evenly matched with Kylo Ren again, after she took out Snoke and more royal guards than he did. Then she lifted several dozen boulders at once, even though Luke, with training, wasn't able to take an X-Wing out of a swamp. Despite how much this universe has established that Jedis have to do a lot of training, Rey just masters every Force power that she'd even know she had, including Force Lightning. I of course could go over several more examples, but this video was already long enough. But every time Vi gets a power boost in the series, it's because of the weapon she has. When she took on that group of henchmen, she had metal gauntlets. Later on, she gets super high-tech gauntlets. Hell, I would actually say the biggest Mary Sue moment in the series is when Jace, despite not having any training, completely masters the high-tech hammer he builds for himself. Now, Diregentleman presumably likes Rey from Star Wars, but remember when he was covering my video and he said he didn't have a problem with Spy V's section? Well, this is what she said about Rey!
There seems to be this need to appeal to the more modern and socially aware crowd, but often in doing so they end up completely undermining the entire point that crowd was trying to make and produce characters that piss everyone off or they don't really satisfy anybody.
Bro, you can't say you don't have a problem with someone's section of a video even when you really disagree with them just because they have a vagina.
But money where my mouth is, I watch a lot of media these days, and I can't think of another modern female protagonist who pulls off a feat as superhuman as Vi does in this scene with less of an in-universe justification.
Well, that's because you're either stupid or you're just lying.
If there was a consistent standard for whether female characters could be too empowered by plot armor, Vi would squarely fall into the too empowered category. But there is no consistent standard.
Shut the fuck up. All she did was take out a guy bigger than her. I can tell looking at you that you've probably never been in a fight before. I'm a pretty strong guy. I hit the gym a lot. But if a 15-year-old girl socked me in the jaw with a metal gauntlet, I'm definitely gonna feel that. No matter how strong you are, a sock to the jaw is a sock to the jaw. You really can't build up all that much muscle there.
And when a community asserts that the object of their fandom is flawless, it ultimately puts the piece of media on a pedestal where constructive criticism can't reach it. All art, no matter how beloved or popular, needs to be criticized, and that criticism should ideally serve the purpose of educating critical consumers on how the disparate elements of a product inform both its holistic essence and the essence of other art.
I think your criticism is just dog shit. I don't think the show is perfect, but if this is the best point you can come up with against it, well then I think it's way closer to perfection than I once did. Yeah, sure, I think all art should be criticized and nothing is perfect, but come up with an argument against it that actually, you know, makes sense.
And to put it in a less pretentious way, stop obsessing over one show and using it as a bludgeon to discredit other people's love of other shows.
I saw the text. That's exactly what you're doing. You compared the fighting in Arcane to another anime that you really like. Shut the fuck up. And good for you. You consume a lot of media. Guess what? The people who have seen Arcane have seen other shows. They obsess over Arcane because it's really good. Eventually the hype will die down and they'll find a new show to obsess over.
Let everybody like what they like and dislike what they don't, and leave the critics to sort out why.
Everyone is a critic and you're a really bad one. Stop looking down upon people just because you have a YouTube channel, bro.
And if you're interested in being a critic yourself, the best thing you can do is break free from the false dichotomy of unassailably good art and irredeemably bad art.
Or you can come up with a good argument to convince people to change their mind and not constantly strawman your opposition. Okay, that's basically his video on Arcane. He constantly strawmans his opposition, ignores counter-arguments, acts super cocky as if he's a god amongst men when he's really just another douchebag with a blue yeti, makes what he thinks is an argument when it really isn't, and brings up comparisons that don't really work. Now, Diregentleman, if you made it this far in the video, I want to know what you'll do to clear up the misinformation you spread about me. I've made my fair share of mistakes myself on YouTube, and I did what I could to clean them up. I mean, after all, it is the gentlemanly thing to do. I just want to thank all my supporters on Patreon. You helped me pay my electric bill. I have no idea why, out of all the videos made on me, this one had to be the one that just blew the fuck up. Like 90% of the other videos made on me, it's just cutting me out of context, and I don't know why people think they can get away with this. Like if it just got 10k views, I would have probably ignored it, but it got over 100k. To all my haters, just try not to back the wrong horse. Like, this is the 6th or 5th time you guys have done this. Anyways, my next video will probably be on Camila Cuevas. I say probably because I'm still waiting on someone else to finish theirs first.